I can think of no other car that's named after a pub. Looking like a cross between the Land Rover Defender and the Mercedes G-Wagon, the Ineos Grenadier. In 2016, when Land Rover decided that they were no longer going to make the Defender that they've had running for about 67 years or something similar, British billionaire and JK lookalike Jim Ratcliffe asked Land Rover if he could buy the tooling so he could keep the Defender going. Although obviously how that would have been possible with safety standards, etc., I don't really know. They declined, even though he was the richest man in the UK. They just said, no, bog off, Jim, we're making our own. And they did, but not to be put off. Jim was a very determined man. How else would you possibly be the richest man in the UK otherwise? So he set out to rebuild the Land Rover Defender himself. But of course he couldn't call it the Land Rover Defender because it wasn't. None of the bits you see on this car are from a Land Rover. It just looks a bit like it. He also didn't want the car to be designed by some arty Italian diva or a French chain-smoking lunatic. So he got a man called Toby on the case. That's right, Toby was the head designer amongst a team of other people, of course. Why does it even need designing, you might add? They want to copy the old Defender, why not just copy it and change a few bits here and there? Well, I suppose I'll just do a direct copy of it. Jaguar Land Rover did actually try to stop this from happening because of its similarity. But, you know, obviously it's here, so they failed, didn't they? I can think of no other car that's named after a pub, but this one is the Grenadier in Belgravia in London. That's where the idea first came to Jim. That's the power of doing things that you intend on doing. When I first saw this car, I could see what they were trying to do, but the G-Wagon part of it was putting me off somewhat. Although we have the shoulders of the Defender, those back lamps, didn't like them particularly. And the image of the G-Wagon driver isn't brown trousers, long hair, beard, and clearly a dog poo bag hanging out of my pocket. It's a bit different. In fact, the shirt doesn't belong at all, does it? Unless, yeah, that's it. That's how you wear a shirt when you drive a G-Wagon. My moves just don't cut it. Jim Ratcliffe's idea was visionary. He wanted to bring the old Defender back, but make it better. So we can already see it's wider, it's going to be safer, but beyond that, it's built better. It has the ladder chassis and the subframes separate, but they're galvanised. And the axles are stronger than what they ever were on the Defender. Look at the size of these towing hooks on the back. And then the electrics for the tow bar all built into it. The side step, the snorkel, the winch, which is hidden underneath here, that huge roof rack, and the ladder, which you need to climb up to get on there. They're not standard kit, but they are part of the options list. And it's a very, very big and expensive options list. And just look at the height of the thing. We're surrounded by off-road vehicles, but they're never really taller than me normally. This must be, what, 6'8", 6'9"? That was a really good guess. Apparently it's 2 meters high, but then with the roof rack on there, that's at least another 3 inches. Almost 2 meters wide, almost 5 meters long. It does take up a fair bit of space. Ow! Ow, that's a lot. That's not plastic, these are metal. These are proper hangers for putting tables and stuff like that on, front and back. Not only do we have the shoulder of the original Defender, but we have the upright back, similar kind of window, rear door and front door all look very, very similar, except there's a gap in between. And then the front wing and the bonnets, it's all, well, it's exceedingly like it, isn't it? Except for the bit that juts out the front. But then again, if that plastic cover was to be taken off and you could see the winch, maybe it would. A lot of the stuff on this vehicle looks like things you can take off from the outside. Obviously the wheels, but you don't normally get that on the doors. It looks like if you've got a T50 piece or a T55, you can actually just unbolt the doors from the outside. I reckon you'd scratch the paint though. Built in Hamburger. Look. Blue, white and red. You might think that's in reference to it being British, but it's not. It's in reference to it being built in France. There is the fuel filler flap. It looks like you press it from that side, but you don't. You press it from the other side. That's slightly confusing. And what a big filler flap that is. Let's have a look inside. First glance is ever so slightly old Toyota. Look at the size of that grab handle. That's for people with big hands to still be able to secure themselves. Yeah, if you're a big man with big hands and big proportions, you can stop yourself from falling out of the side. And you don't have to be afraid to look afraid. That's what that's there for. Oh, look. See that? Looks like there's some sort of electricity power point there. And there as well. No doubt they'll be on the other side as well. No doubt. Because they are, I know, I've seen them. It's for ringing lights up and stuff. All of these kind of features decided before it even went into production. Before somebody had a bright idea of what if we had a great big light bar on the front, etc. They knew what the old Defender drivers liked and wanted and included it all right from the start. So we have simple door cards that are not exactly posh. We have a wipe clean floor with no carpet. We have seat covers on it. We have some of the old Land Rover seating position, but without the uncomfortable part where you have to drive like that. And then the rest of the interior looks like you'd expect a modern Defender to look like, including this sharp angled windscreen, which is very short. But there's a real combination of influences here. Obviously, there's the Land Rover, there's bits of Toyota, there's bits of BMW, there's bits of Jeep. And some people will call this a Jeep anyway, because they call anything that's supposed to do four-wheel drive a Jeep. The air vents look like an LA tower block. BMW, actual handbrake, one of these thingies so you can confuse yourself, and an LCD screen. Heated seats, we have just proper buttons and then these exposed screw heads on the outside. For a long time, car manufacturers have done everything they can to get rid of exposed screw heads. And on this they thought, nah, let's not bother covering them up. Everybody wants to see them. There's definitely somewhere to keep your left foot to drive this automatic. But see how close my foot is to the brake pedal. I find yourself driving it with a slightly odd position like so, just to avoid doing impromptu emergency stops. I would say that this car has the most unlikely of engines, which is a BMW straight six petrol. Easily the most unexpected thing I've found on this car so far is on the headlining. So I'll have to just pop back in it, won't I? Suddenly it's starting to look like some sort of military vehicle. All these switches up here. Switches on the roof for things that you wouldn't normally have. Then it looks like we have 8 bus seats that are actually switches for things going on the outside. This one powers up the rear view mirror. Door shut sounds. I'm going to give it a bit of a slam because it's so heavy. Quite sturdy. Quite sturdy. Certainly a lot more purposeful sounding than that on the old Defender. Getting in, you can do it wrong. You can go for right leg first, which means that then you get trapped. Or should we try left leg first, see if that's any better? Yes, remember, left leg first. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. That's weird. Gosh, you've actually got to use one of these thingies. There's no gas struts. Why are there no gas struts on it? There we go, BMW 3 litre straight 6. There doesn't say BMW on it, of course, it says Grenadier. Oh, powered by BMW though. A 3 litre straight 6 is all well and good in a car. But will it be enough for this? That's a tiny door. It's quite a long way up here, so if you want to use the boot as a seat, you need some arm strength, otherwise you're not going to manage it. Good exercise, potentially. This is interesting, little fold out shelf. Is it for changing the baby's nappy or having a barbecue? Depending on who you are, those could be very similar things. Proper dog guard there and substantial lashing points. One thing they didn't bother to engineer into this car though are unusual and inconsistent panel gaps. Although it does have, strangely enough, quite big panel gaps and bits of cable you can see through the panel gaps. I know it's not designed to let in water. I bet the turning circle isn't up to much. First thing I'm noticing is the steering. The steering doesn't self-center. It just carries on going in the direction that you point the wheel and it stays there, which is just a little bit unnerving. It's nice and flat when you're going along in a straight line, but then it kind of catches you out somewhat. Visibility out the front though, excellent. I can really see where the corners of the car are, and I like that. Often a modern car doesn't give you that at all. It just gives you these blind spots everywhere and asks you to guess where you're going. God, it does sound good as well. It's not the kind of car you'd associate with having a petrol engine, but it does. There's a 3 litre straight 6 BMW lump with, I think, 282 brake horsepower, 331 pound-foot of torque. But the car is knocking on for 3 tonne. But it goes alright. Goes better than expected. And sounds better than that. It needs to have power though, it'd be useless without it. It's also got a 3.5 tonne towing capacity, so this car, fully loaded with people and luggage and towing, would be just over 7 tonne. So without a big load of power, it's really not going to work. However, fully loaded, I can't imagine it going that well off 282 brake horsepower. The brakes work. I guess within Jim's dream of having his own remake of the Land Rover Defender, it would have been right without some of the Land Rover characteristics, like the slightly unnerving handle and this kind of lolloping up and down everywhere you go, and needing somewhere to put your arm. Although this is a very wide car, you're still sat close to the door, so you still have your arm there, but this is a bit more comfortable than that metal frame of the Defender. Once you get to 40 miles per hour, there is an awful lot of sounds going on. Not just from the engine, the air intake and the rather metallic exhaust note, but the roof. It's got that great big roof rack on there is trying to reorganise an awful lot of wind. And that makes it sound like a Land Rover as well. Although I do trust they've sorted the chassis out and the handling, so it's a bit, less likely to fling you off the road than an old Defender. Still not going to push it. It's not the kind of vehicle that you would really want to be flinging round corners anyway. Not because it can't do it, but because it just doesn't feel right. These windy roads like this are a very good test of a car's handling, even if you don't want to test it. This is probably the only car built currently that is actually made to last, and made with the road conditions in mind, because it doesn't have massive 24-inch alloys on it or rock hard suspension. It's a utilitarian vehicle. It can do proper off-roading, and that means it can actually cope with Britain's shite roads, which is a nice change. Why do people just park where they like these days? A few questions are left unanswered. One being, does this car make me feel like a gangster? Actually, no, because I'm not one. I don't look like a gangster, and I don't act like a gangster. And I don't feel like it's being looked at in quite the same way that I was expecting. I was fully prepared for the idea of just driving along and all these young lads that do the street talk turning round and having a gander, but I've not noticed any of that. Maybe because I've been too busy focusing on driving, or because I've been over the hills and don't tend to hang around in places like that. Would I like to own one of these? Well, I can't even begin to consider the prospect because of the price. Do you know how much this is? It was knocking on for £70,000 when new, and then if you wanted the bits on it, like the roof rack, I like it so much I think I'll just take it home. Actually, that's a joke, but I really do like it. I'm surprised they haven't got a V8 option. Instead, they've teamed up with Hyundai to do some sort of electric venture, which makes sense for many people. I can't see that being right though. Gosh, I'm such a Luddite. Driving around in urban areas, it does suddenly feel ever so slightly Let's start that again. Driving it around in these urban areas, it does suddenly feel just a little bit gangsterish. So it's just as well I haven't got anything to sell. I'm going to say it's rather refreshing to drive such a new car that doesn't feel that new. Everything feels like it used to do. You know, normally you get into a new car and everything's exactly the same. You don't understand half of it, and it practically drives itself. Whereas this, you've actually got to put a bit of effort into it so as to stay on the road. And that's unusual, and I like it. They haven't tried to make it drive like a modern Range Rover or anything like that. It's got a proper handbrake, it's got dials. Although it's got an LCD display, it's got traditional stuff on the go. There are a lot of modern things that are great, but why just have modern things just for the sake of it? This is a car that I like more and more the more I spend time with it. That's not been a lot of time, of course, just a couple of hours. And it would be typical of Britons to reject something like this because they want the proper Land Rover. They want the proper Defender. All those people kicking off because they were replacing it, even though they had to do. How many people kicked off at the Mini R50 saying there's nothing Mini about the new Mini, and then they went ahead and bought it anyway? This is definitely the spiritual successor to the Land Rover Freelander Defender. And it's British. Yet, everyone's bought the new Freelander Defender. And there's nothing wrong with that, except they said they didn't want it. I hope you liked this video, and thank you for watching it. Thank you for liking it if you did. Thanks for being a subscriber. Thank you even more for being a channel member. Thank you for watching it all the way to the end. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for leaving more than one comment. Thank you for replying to other people's comments just because you can. I shall see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Yep, this is AI music. The first time I've ever bothered with it. In actual fact, I just gave it one command and thought that will do. There's nothing to be proud of when it comes to music that you haven't made yourself. The worst bit is that I've got to admit it, or maybe the best thing is that I've got to admit it because I'm not responsible for this cack.